Hi and welcome back to the studio. I'm Laura.
I'm Amelie.
And we've got a creative kids video for you today. We are going to make a really quick and wearable simple little skirt. Now this is a great project to work as a team with your little one because Amelie is just learning how to use the sewing machine. So she is going to do some of the simpler sewing and I'm going to do some of the trickier steps. That said, there's nothing tricky about this really. You're going to whip this skirt up in no time. It's so quick and easy to make. Here's a little example. It's straightforward because there's no shaping, there's no waistband. You're just going to use two rectangles of fabric cut to the appropriate size, and you're going to need a little bit of elastic. So apart from that, in terms of the equipment that you need, you obviously need your sewing machine, some thread that matches your fabric, tape measure, and a couple of safety pins. So we've been working with some of these really pretty poly cotton prints. So these are really inexpensive, you know, they wash up really great. You can get them online. Lovely little prints to make some summery skirts out of. So first things first, you need to measure your little person. So Amelie, can you hop up on the table for me? Did I say table? Oh, don't stand on the table. Stand on the chair, okay? First measurement that you're going to need to take is you're going to need to go from the waist to wherever you want the skirt to end. So on Amelie, the kneecap was, we decided, was a good length. And on Amelie, that is 17 inches. So you can sit down now, thank you. So all you need to do is to cut a rectangle. That is, here's ours ready cut. So this measurement here, the height of your rectangle, that needs to be the measurement plus a little bit extra, and that extra is for the hem and enough fabric to turn over the elastic. So on these, we're cutting, these ones we're making for Amelie, we're cutting them at about 20 inches, which is ample. Could go to 19, you'd still probably be plenty, which will then hem up to give it just the right size. That sort of finished about 17 and a half inches. It's not an exact science. If your skirt ends up being a little bit long, you can just chop the bottom off, or you could hem it up a little bit, or you can wait for your child to grow. The other measurement you're going to need is the waist measurement. If you've got your little person handy, you just need the waist measurement for taking the elastic, for measuring the elastic. So you can kind of do that as you go. So you're going to need two rectangles of fabric. So here's one. So front and back are going to be absolutely identical. So like I say, the short measurement, the height of your rectangle is governed by the length that you want your skirt to be, plus that extra top and bottom. The width of your rectangle is how much fullness you're going to have in your skirt. So the fox one, did you notice when she stood up? That is the first thing she's ever made on a sewing machine. The fox skirt, the rectangles in that one are about 36 inches wide. That's quite a full skirt. Depending on the fabric, it's not an exact science. That's what I'm saying. You can kind of just work with what you've got. This one we've cut to be about the same size. This little purple spotty one, she's grown out of this one now. This is obviously for a smaller person. I've measured it. The width of the rectangles on this one were only 26 inches. And it just affects the fullness. If you cram in loads and loads of fabric onto your elastic, and especially if the fabric is a little bit stiff, you might find that your skirt sticks out a bit like a lampshade and doesn't actually look that good. So in that instance, like with the fox one, we didn't use the full width of the fabric. I cut about 6 inches off the side and that fullness seemed to work quite well. So all that I do, I cut the rectangle that's got the height, and then I gather the long size up in my hand and I just offer it up to the child and see how it sticks out. And this fabric is lovely and lightweight and soft and drapey. So I think that that's going to gather in really nicely. So I think that should work quite well. Now the first thing you need to do when you have cut your fabric rectangles is just zigzag the top and the bottom, so those long sides, and that's the sort of activity that your little one can help you with. So we're just zigzagging the edges of the fabric so that they don't fray in the wash, because we obviously want to be able to wash and wear this skirt without it dropping to bits. Now if you are making them and you're not having a little helper help you, then it's super quick just to do this on the overlocker. if you don't have an overlocker, you can just set zigzag on your sewing machine and just zigzag those edges nice and neatly. Now if you're using this as an opportunity to teach your little ones to sew, here are my top tips. Supervise them, obviously, number one. It's dangerous, it's a sewing machine, we don't want anybody sewing through any little fingers. So I've been really strict with Amelie that she keeps her hands away from the needle. She keeps that left hand nice and flat on the machine bed and away from the needle, and her right hand stays again away from the needle at the front, and she can just guide the fabric through like that. Now, other tips, a lot of sewing machines, they have a speed slider on them so that you can override the foot pedal to a certain degree. You know, you can set it to be on the slower end of the motor speed, and that's what we've done. So normally, I'm sure you're like me, I sew 100 miles an hour to get things done. When you're just starting out, turn that machine down, set it going really, really slow, and then when they foot pedal, even if they're a bit keen and they foot to the floor, the machine still isn't going to go that fast. My other tip is when they're just learning to sew, really it's about getting them to guide the fabric through the machine nice and straight, because when you're sewing garments, you need your seams to be pretty straight, don't you? Otherwise you're going to have wonky sides to your skirt. So this is great practice for that, and all that I've done is I've put a little piece of masking tape onto the bed of the sewing machine so that Amelie has got something that longer. You know, on the bed of your machine you have lines by the foot. I think when you're little it's helpful to have a little bit more than that. So I've put a piece of masking tape that she can line the edge of the fabric up with, so that it gives her just that extra bit of visual guidance on keeping the fabric straight. So with this nice wide zigzag, I think we've got ours set to a width of about 4, so it's going a nice wide cap, and all that we're aiming for is just to overcast the edge of this fabric really, so it doesn't have to be perfect. Right, so once you have zigzagged your top edges and bottom edges of your front and back panels, you just need to place them right sides together and sew your side seams with a straight stitch. And take, I mean, if you've got a little one helping you, it doesn't hurt to take a fairly generous seam allowance. So take perhaps a 1/2 inch seam allowance is going to be just fine. If you're sewing it yourself, then you can take something that's a bit narrower if you want to. Again, none of this is critical, which is why it's such a forgiving project to have children helping with. Now I am going to pop in just a couple of pins, okay, to help keep all of this lined up. So what do we remember, Amelie? We don't sew through pins, do we? No, we have to get
over them.
No, we don't sew over them. So we just stop, don't we, when we're ready. Yep. So now sewing machine is set to straight stitch, and I've marked, you know, I've got this masking tape guide. I've marked some marks on that again to help her line up and keep all of her edges nice and straight so we don't get too wonky seams. I just think it's so satisfying for children when they're learning a skill that they get to actually make something that they can be really proud of, and making your own clothes, isn't that just fantastic? So I'm sure Amelie's going to be making and wearing these little skirts all summer. So that's the first side seam done, and you just need to repeat that for the other side. Okay, now all you need to do is to zigzag the raw edges, and of those side seams you can just zigzag the raw edges together and that's going to be fine. And just give it a little press. Press your seam allowances normally to the back side, okay? Okay, Amelie, you ready to zigzag the side seams for me?
Yes.
Excellent, right, I'm just snipping off these pesky thread ends so they don't get tangled up. And then, shall we set the machine to zigzag?
Yep.
Okay, and nice and wide, so let's press that plus, take it up again to about 4 width, which isn't quite the widest, but it's plenty on this, and off you go. Okay, if I start you off there, and you just zigzag down those raw edges for me.
Okay.
Okay, Amelie, can I have the skirt now? That's all.
Yep.
Side seams sewn and zigzagging edges done. So like I say, just press those seam allowances to the back. And while you're at the iron, you can turn over the top edge and press the creasing for the casing for the elastic. So before you do that, just place the elastic over the top of your work. Just judge the depth and think how much you're going to turn over. Because if you make it too tight, it's just going to be an absolute nightmare to try and feed the elastic through. So you want to allow a little bit of wriggle room to first of all be able to sew a line of stitches down here to form the actual casing, and then also just to give a little bit of space to get that elastic through with ease. Okay, so it doesn't need to be gaping, but just a little bit of extra top and bottom. So I think that looks pretty reasonable. I'm just going to measure what that is. So I reckon 1.25 inches. So I've got inch, just a shade under inch elastic, and I'm turning over 1.25 inches. But you judge it on your fabric. This is quite a thin fabric. If you've got a thicker fabric, you might need to allow a little bit more of a turning. So take that over to your ironing table now and just press that crease in all the way around, and it makes it so much easier then when it comes to the sewing. Right, so we've swapped seats because I think this little bit is too tricky for an absolute beginner, because I need that casing to be sewn fairly accurately. If we waver in too much, we're not going to be able to feed the elastic through, and it's just going to be super frustrating. So anyway, I've pressed that turning over, and now all I'm going to do is stitch a line of straight sewing just reasonably near the edge, scant quarter inch in, depending on what your measurements are for your casing. Okay, obviously you don't want to go too near the edge of your fabric, it's just going to be weak, but anything else is going to be just fine. Do a little back stitch at the start of your line of sewing, because in a minute we are going to feed that elastic through and we don't want to unravel the line of stitching. So a little back stitch when you start, and then whiz all the way around your skirt. So you can see I started about there, I'm not come all the way around, but I'm leaving a couple of inch gap there just to feed that elastic into. So again, little back stitch, and we're good to go. Right, so now it's time to pop the elastic in. Amelie, can you stand up? Because I think the easiest thing to do is to put the elastic around the waist of your child and see where you're at with it. Because I always think different elastics, some have more give, some are much more stretchy, and I just like to kind of get a feel for it of how tight it is around their little middles. So I'm going to get the exact measurement, but then I'm going to, don't breathe in. Then I'm going to just overlap it a little bit so I can feel there's a little bit of tension on that elastic, and I'm going to cut it at that point, assuming as well that I'm going to overlap the elastic by a good inch at each end, so I'm losing a couple of inches out of that measurement, so it's going to be nice and snug. So don't make it too tight on them, else they won't want to wear it if it's too tight, but likewise you don't want it having no stretch at all. So Amelie, can you pop the safety pin? Yep. I'm going to put one at this end. Can you put one safety pin at that end for me? Yep. So we're going to use safety pins. We're going to use two. One to feed the elastic round on. Have you done yours? Yep, lovely.
I'm just going to clip it.
Okay. And then the safety pin at my end of the elastic, I'm just going to pin the elastic into that seam allowance. So I'm at the space I've left in the casing there. I'm just going to pin the elastic to the seam allowance of the skirt there, just so, especially if you're having a helper help you, you don't pull the elastic right into the casing and it's lost forever. So it's a bit fiddly to feed it through, isn't it? So shall I do this job?
Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so feed your elastic into the casing and just use that pin just to help push it round and guide it round. So it can be a little bit fiddly, but I think it's so satisfying when you start to gather that skirt up and really starts looking like a skirt. So just feed it along. The only thing really that you need to look out for is you don't want to flip the elastic and get it twisted in the casing. You want to keep it nice and flat all the way around. So just take your time, and it's one of those real satisfying little jobs. Okay, Amelie, we are there.
Good.
Okay, so let me show you. Just popped out the back out of where we went in, so we can take these safety pins out now, and we can overlap the ends of the elastic and sew them together. So Amelie, you in charge of looking after those safety pins?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously just do a little double check, make sure your elastic is not twisted. Okay, so pull those ends of elastic out of the skirt casing a little bit, because you want to be able to get them under your sewing machine, overlap them a little bit, and then sew them together. So I like to go up and down, and then I like to do a diagonal across and then back. And that should be plenty secure. So we can pop that out from under the machine and we can let that just disappear now. Very satisfying little part of the process. Pull that elastic into the skirt, and then what we need to do is just close up this opening here. So let's snip some of these horrible stray threads off. Make it nice and tidy all the time.
Yep.
And pop that back under the machine. Okay, be careful, I don't want to sew through the elastic. Just a little back stitch to start and stop. And we're just going to catch down that opening of that edge. Little back stitch to finish. There we go, and we're done with the casing. That looks really nice. So all you need to do is to kind of distribute your skirt gathers equally around the elastic. Obviously you don't want all the gathers at the back or all at one side. Spread them around. And then what can work really nice, couple of little options really. You want to secure your elastic within the casing. So what you can do is you can go to your side seam. Here we are, happen to be at a side seam. So that's nicely evenly distributed. Go to a side seam. There it is. And I'm just going to top stitch through all the layers in the ditch of that side seam. And that's going to anchor that elastic and keep it upright. So we do that at both sides, and it means that when you're wearing it and you're pulling your skirt up and when it's going through the washing machine, that elastic isn't going to move within the casing. It's going to keep it nice and straight and sturdy. That's lovely. It only takes a second to do, and it just means that your skirt's going to be really comfortable when you wear it. Okay, so we're nearly there. It's nearly done. We've just got to do the hem. So if you're not sure about the length of your skirt, if you think, oh, I might have needed to have cut it a little bit shorter, try it on with your little helper and see how it looks. So Amelie, can you just jump up on the chair for me? We'll just hold this one up to you, okay, and see how it compares
with my other one.
With your other one. And it's almost identical, so this is going to be just fine. Okay, so you can sit down for me again now. So you can press the hem if you want to. With mine, I'm only going to do a little narrow turned hem. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to be lazy and I'm not going to press the hem. I know, I probably should, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to turn the end of the fabric over once and then over again. Now this fabric is very well behaved, so I think I can easily get away with it. And then I'm just going to top stitch near the edge of that hem. Now if you were turning a deeper hem, it's the same principle. So one turn to get those raw edges under, and then you would take a bigger turn to make your hem. If it was a bigger hem, then I would press it, because I think it would be a bit fiddly without pressing. But we're just going to wing it for this. Right, so I'm turning that little turn, and then another turn over, and just again very simple straight stitching around. If you've got an experienced helper, they'll be able to do this step. If you've got a newbie, then it might be something that you want to do, just so you make sure that hem is quite straight. Okay, that's it, all hemmed. So all we need to do is snip off all these messy thread ends, give it one final little press, and we can have the big try on and see how it looks. So Amelie, you're pretty excited to have a new skirt?
Yeah.
Yeah, and one that you've actually helped make? That's really exciting, isn't it? Thanks for watching us today, and we look forward to seeing you again in the studio really soon. Bye for now.
Bye.